Welcome to Disability News and Views, a production of the City of Boston's Disabilities Commission. October is National Disability Employment Awareness Month, a time to recognize the value of disabled workers in every industry of our economy. The purpose of National Disability Employment Awareness Month is to educate about disability employment issues and to celebrate the many and varied contributions of workers with disabilities. In today's show, we will highlight how the City of Boston values and recruits disabled workers. Workers with disabilities make contributions to our city every single day. And we want to take time in this episode of Disability News and Views to make sure that city workers with disabilities know that they are appreciated and that their work is valuable. So thank you to City of Boston employees with disabilities for all you do. Now we're going to jump right into the show and have a community conversation with our co-host Ken Meyer and powerful community advocate and fellow colleague here in the Disabilities Commission, Kai Kennedy. Take it away, Ken.
Okay. Hello, Ty. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Ken?
I'm very well, thank you. Tell me a little bit about yourself and why October is so important and Disability Month.
Sure. As Colleen mentioned, I work for the City of Boston's Disability Commission, and I started working about a year or so ago. I have been disabled my entire life, but I did not know this until this maybe about 2 or so years ago. And so with this information that I learned that I am autistic and also have a connective tissue disorder called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, or EDS for short. I also have several mental health disabilities. And so when I started to suspect that I was autistic in the summer of about 2021, was around the same time that I started my advocacy journey. I founded a nonprofit organization that's ran entirely by autistic people. And I actually started with my advocacy by hosting what is called Spaces on the app formerly known as Twitter, which is essentially like a live podcast, voice chat sort of recording where you can talk with your followers and they can talk back. And so I started providing these spaces to provide education for mothers who suspected that their children might be autistic. And in my opinion, National Disability Employment Awareness Month is extremely important for several reasons. This process of employment has never really been accessible, from the way that job requirements are written to what's expected of someone during an interview. And then if you're lucky enough to get the job, it's not always easy to get accommodations, despite the fact that it should be. So I think the existence of this month plays a very important role in changing this. Not only are people with disabilities able to work, but many of us want to, and a lot of us need to. But there's still this huge gap in employment between people with disabilities and people without disabilities. And so the only way to close that gap is by continuing to provide education and resources for disabled people who want to work and need to work, and also for the places of employment that they might be applying to. And National Disability Employment Awareness Month gives us the perfect platform for that work to be done.
Do you work with a staff or anything like that, or is it just you?
So for my 9 to 5, as I call it, my regular job, I work with the City of Boston's Disability Commission. For my nonprofit organization, we are a staff of about 20 or so. All of us are autistic, but we have a wide variety of people who also have other disabilities. And we are global majority, which means that the majority of our staff is comprised of Black, Brown, and Indigenous people.
Okay. Uh, Tell me what else you can add as far as employment is concerned and how people can and should be treated with disabilities.
So I think the easiest way for employers within the workforce to treat and talk to or just work with folks with disabilities is to just engage with us. A lot of times, our community is an afterthought in a lot of aspects of life, and the workforce is no exception to that. But when employers reach out to disability advocacy organizations, not just for like consultations, but to actually co-collaborate on things like writing descriptions for jobs, choosing where to post the job openings, creating the onboarding process and procedures. It kind of shows our community that we are wanted and valued as part of the society's workforce.
Um, is it easier now as time goes on to work with people with disabilities and other employers?
That's hard to say. From a perspective of a disabled person, I think that it is becoming easier to find jobs that are accommodating. From the perspective of I guess, someone who has looked for a job before, it is still difficult to find jobs that appeal to disabled people. And I think that kind of goes back to being able to co-collaborate with organizations to do things like write job descriptions and choose where you're going to be posting the job openings, so that even if it's easy to work in a place and to get accommodations, that it's just as easy to actually find a place to work. I think that's the first step.
Right. Where do you like to go as far as uh, the disability area is concerned in Boston?
So specific to disability, I don't think that I can think of a specific place, but there are some places that I go to that are extremely accessible and that are a staple in my community. I live in Roxbury. We have a community center just around the corner that is all like ground level. They have a nice ramp that goes up into the building, and it is this huge building where they have different classes such as cooking classes, painting, gardening, and so my oldest daughter and I love to visit there. And then there is a grocery store in my community as well, and they provide sourced their goods from Black-owned businesses in the area. Everything that is made in their cafe is halal, and the community is just really kind of attached to this grocery store. But the amazing thing about it is that it was just built, and so it is like a prime example of built accessible architecture, with their automatic doors and the ramps that are like the perfect slope for anybody who uses a wheelchair. And we really enjoy spending time, even if we don't have to go grocery shopping. We like to go there because it's a really warm and inviting place to eat and socialize.
Right. So, what can we or can you do to keep disability awareness um, going on other than just in October?
That's a great question. I think it's important to continue what things would be started in October. So if you're reaching out to these organizations, or if you're reaching out to our commission here at the City of Boston, continue doing that all year. Do things like include events and webinars, and tabling opportunities in your newsletter if you have a newsletter for an organization. If you're just a constituent or just a resident of Boston, come to the events anyways, and engage with the disability community, learn about what we go through in society when it's not accessible, and just get to know us as people even outside of that, and understand that we are that we are across all genders and races and socioeconomic classes, and just all across every identity you can think of. And so just engaging with us all year round, and kind of getting an idea of the types of events that we hold, the spaces that we occupy, and continuing to co-collaborate with us. I think that's a huge theme, is actually co-collaborating with the disability community, and not just asking for advice or getting, a consultation.
All right. Well, listen, I wish you all the luck in the world. You've got a tough road to hoe, I think, as far as keeping this visible to the public other than October. But it sounds like you're able to do it and do a good job. And if people want to contact you, how can they do that?
So I can be reached by email at my City of Boston email address, which is my first name, Kylia, Kylia, dot my last name, Kennedy, Kennedy, at boston.gov. That's the quickest and easiest way to reach me. I check my email several times a day. So if there is an ask for maybe a training or anything of that nature involving disability awareness, etiquette, language, all that good stuff, I am the person to go to as the accessibility and inclusion training specialist for the City of Boston.
Well, again, best of luck and continued success. Colleen, I will turn it back to you and see what other goodies you have to offer.
Well, thank you, Ken. And I would like to welcome our guests this month, who works in the People Operations Cabinet, Bernadine DeSanges. Welcome, Bernadine.
Hello. Thank you so much, Commissioner McCosh, for having me today. I'm so excited to join your conversation.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to hearing a lot about you and what you do and more
Yep.
about the People's Operations Cabinet. So first of all, can you tell us your role in the cabinet and what you do in your job?
Sure. So, as Commissioner McCosh just said, my name is Bernadine DeSantis. I'm the Director of Diversity in the People Operations Cabinet, which is a newer cabinet underneath this new administration. And within People Operations, we have the Office of Human Resources, Labor, and the Registrar's Office. And for me in particular, as the Director of Diversity, really what I like to focus in on, it was hard to focus in on, is our ensuring that our city of Boston workforce really reflects that of our constituent population, which we also know is forever changing, right? And so when we think about some of our historically marginalized groups, when we talk about race and gender, there's definitely a value placed in that, but then also recognizing that diversity really ranges across the spectrum. You have religious affiliation, sexual orientation, ability and disability, ethnic origin, right? And the list goes on when we talk about our protected classes and additional identities. And so, I think even most recently thinking about within our migrant population, and then folks who are multicultural, folks who are multilingual. And as we think about our constituents, just how do we ensure that our city of Boston workforce reflects that? How do we ensure that our current employees are celebrated and recognized within the ranges of diversities that they have within their identities? And then how do we ensure that we make that happen through recruiting efforts? One is one, and then our retention practices, right? And what goes on in that, and then ultimately, and hopefully, once we continue to do a lot of the work that we're doing within this new cabinet strategically, is focused on avenues and pathways to really identify what promotional practices will look like within our city. I think the work that People Operations is doing underneath the leadership of our chief, Alex Lawrence, is very, very instrumental in our systems and our policies, and then the work that's happening within the city and making sure that it's very human-centered. And right now, we've even most recently added a newer value, which is being equity-driven. And so you really find that at the helm of a lot of the work that we're doing in the cabinet of People Operations is putting our people first. And specifically within my work, it's our current employees, and how do we prioritize them, and how do we place value in the work that they're doing and who they are, and finding that they belong within our city's workforce. And then for folks who have yet to join us, how do we ensure that folks know that the city is in fact a place that wants them, that welcomes them, and that invites them to really be part of our workforce dynamic?
Wow, that's incredible. We're really glad to hear that disability is elevated to diversity, because a lot of times disability is left out of those conversations. And I know since Mayor Wu was elected, my office has moved into the Equity and Inclusion Cabinet, and we're just really thrilled to include disability in those conversations. So super appreciate that you're looking at that as well as the Director of Diversity.
Absolutely, absolutely. It makes such a difference, right? I mean, our city has folks who have disabilities in it. And so it makes all the sense in the world to ensure that our workforce reflects that, right? Within various tiers of roles and opportunities, professions. And so that's really what we're committed to making happen.
Excellent. And so can you talk a little bit about National Disability Employment Awareness Month? It's something that our office celebrates to recognize the value and contributions that disabled workers bring to the workplace and to the economy. And I'm just wondering if you can talk a little bit about how you feel about that.
Yeah, well, one, amazing, right? Like shout outs to October and all of the work that was done for folks who pioneered to really make this happen. For October being National Disabilities Employment Awareness Month, and then also just like the work within the ADA, like all of it is super important and impactful. And I think for us, as far as the work that we're doing, one of which is partnering with all of you in the Disabilities Commission on November 4th to really put on an interview day. And really, in essence, what that means is an opportunity for us as the city to work cross-departmentally to really create pathways and opportunities for folks to be interviewed for positions within the city. And so on November 4th, we partner with the Disabilities Commission and community partners that you all have been working with to identify departments and positions that are open within the city of Boston for folks with disabilities to be considered for specifically. And I think these particular efforts have really allowed us to tap into our recruiting efforts in a different way with a little bit more intention and direction behind it, because it's really allowing our departments to come forward and say, hey, we have these open positions, and meet candidates that day on the spot, and interview folks for positions that are open, again, on the spot, and then being able to be considered for forward movement and consideration for these opportunities and these roles. And so on November 4th, we're looking forward to hosting that with the Disabilities Commission. But I would say in general too, as a cabinet and as a group of people, being human-centered, being equity-driven, it's really something we're grounded in with regards to like our policies that we're creating, and fine-tuning the systems that we're working on improving on a constant basis, on a consistent basis, is really, again, all about creating more pathways and opportunities to ensure that all of the work we're doing is putting the people first. And again, like the people who work at the city and work for the city are our constituents as well, right? And so how to create a space where employees feel valuable, employees feel like, regardless of what elements of their identities that they either lead with or maybe are not necessarily leading with, have a place. And I think, again, disabilities is very much part of that conversation, especially because people don't even have to disclose that they have a disability, right? And if in the event a person does have a disability, it's up to them to share that in the event that they need an accommodation. And so we at the city, within people operations and OHR, also have a system and a pathway for folks who need accommodations to put in a request for those accommodations, and have folks who oversee that. That is not within my particular wheelhouse, but I do know that we provide those services and those supports for people, again, as needed, right? And so we are not at all a city who's like, if you have a disability, don't apply, don't, we won't consider you. That's so far from the truth. And so we want to ensure that, one, people know that, one, people and people feel that, which is also why I'm really excited to be on this call with you right now, because I hear that there are stigmas sometimes and people are nervous when it comes to applying for jobs at the city, but I want people to know that whoever you are and whatever, whatever elements are part of your identity, the city does in fact have a place for you. It's just a matter of us working together to seeing how we can accommodate that.
Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, and I will say, as an employee with a disability, you can't see it on screen, but I do use a wheelchair, that it's always difficult for us to figure out, like, should we disclose it before we come for an interview? Like you said, is there stigma? Are they going to hold it against me? So one thing that the interview day is aiming to do is to remove that barrier of uncertainty. So just to follow up a little bit on what you said, our commission is hosting an interview day with the People Operations Cabinet to bring in a certain number of people with disabilities who've applied for jobs with the city. And we're working with Mass Ability, the former Mass Rehab, JVS, Work Inc., and a few other disability organizations to identify candidates who are Boston residents with disabilities who are job ready and actively looking for work. So we're going to bring them in, and if they meet the minimum qualifications, they'll be granted a first round interview for that job. And like I said, that's going to break down so many barriers, because you don't have to worry about disclosing your disability or not. And another important point is that, like you said, all disabilities are not visible. So someone may have a disability that they're worried about, and you don't have to disclose that if you don't want to, but if you need an accommodation, you're certainly welcome to. And like you said, the city has a lot of professionals who work on this every day. So reasonable accommodations are always part of the employment option for someone with a disability. So those are great points that you made.
Thank you.
So can you tell us at all about your work with other departments in equity? I'm thinking that you've had interview days with the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Advancement, and I don't know if you're talking about that with other constituencies as well.
Yeah, so I think so. Interview Days has kind of taken a life of its own in so many respects, and so as we just talked about, doing one with the Disabilities Commission, we've partnered with the Office of Black Male Advancement. We've partnered with the Office of Returning Citizens. We also hosted an interview day in partnership with IFC, not a community-based organization out in Mattapan, supporting our migrant population in joining our workforce. We hosted interview days for 911 call takers. We've done them for our in property management, for our security officers. I mean, again, like the list truly goes on. And I think really it's recognizing that either there are specific positions that might be traditionally more harder to fill or might have multiple openings. And so we'd like to fill these roles at once. And then being able to do that through interview days have been successful because you have one particular position, for example, that you're interviewing for, and you might have 15 or 20, 30 candidates interviewing for that position that day. And again, there's like multiple openings. So it's in the employer's favor, and it's also in the candidate's favor to participate. And I think for some of the other interview days that we've done that maybe not necessarily positions that aren't necessarily position specific, but are supporting our other departments and really supporting the populations of folks that they're targeted at supporting. They've been super successful too, because I think it really helps to create a space where, as you were even saying, for the one that we have coming up November 4th, like stigmas that may be associated with certain elements of one's identity is not necessarily something we want folks to feel limited by, right? But recognize that, hey, we recognize that you might have a certain element of your identity that you may feel limited by, but in this space, like we still want to interview you. This is for you. We want to get to know you, and we want to see what roles within the city are a great fit for you based on your interests and based on what we have coming up. And I think the Equity and Inclusion Cabinet has been a great partner in really moving forward with a lot of the work that we're doing with interview days, because it's helped us to tap into different groups of individuals and different groups of community workers who may, again, have not necessarily found that the city was a place for them, but through this have found opportunities to consider joining our workforce, which ultimately is the goal, because the more creative we are in coming in being part of the community, meeting our constituents where they are based on their needs and their wants, the more active and the more visible we are as a cabinet in people operations, and also as a department within OHR, to ensure that we're supporting people in joining our workforce.
Great. And with just a few minutes left, can you just tell me how is the city doing right now as far as job openings? Do we still have a lot? Should people still be applying?
Always apply to the city. We are always hiring. There are always positions open. I think that there's some positions that one thing I would say is, even if a position looks like it's been posted for too long and you're like, oh, I wouldn't be, there's no way somebody can consider me for that position, still apply for that role. I think positions also have points of contact listed. I encourage people to reach out to the individuals who are listed within the positions if you have any particular questions pertaining to the role that's of interest to you. If you have any desire to work in the city of Boston at all, please, please, please go on our website, boston.gov/career center, and apply for jobs and reach out to us if you have any questions. Folks can even come into City Hall and request support if needed. And we're also working on on other avenues to really get out into the communities and supporting people to apply for jobs as well, because we do recognize too that sometimes it might be a little bit overwhelming to just go on the career site and be like, well, what job do I even want? Like, what job can I even consider? And so just know that we are also thinking about that in people operations and OHR, and thinking about how we can support folks in really recognizing what jobs might be most available to them. And just making it more user friendly. That's really our goal, again, and being human centered and being equity driven. We're not a system in a city that would like to create more barriers for applicants and candidates. We're one that really wants to dismantle those and get rid of them and create more pathways and avenues to have you. And if there's any ways that we can improve, always just let us know. We are a work in progress in a new cabinet. But again, our work is always to create systems and policies and spaces to ensure that more people feel like they belong and that they have a space within our workforce than anything else.
Well, that is preaching to the choir. So we really appreciate it, because we know people with disabilities live in the city. They're talented. They're ready to go to work. So we encourage everybody to apply. I want to thank Bernadine for your time this afternoon, and I look forward to our continued partnership.